in this country. But anyway, we'll call this meeting to order. We've got a few minutes before he actually comes here. Blake, if you would bless us and lead us in the pledge.
Father God, we thank you for this chance to gather together, and we pray that you be with us as we plan out the future of the city through redistricting and give us wisdom and guidance in that process. And thank you for the people who have come before us. I pray that in that also we act wise and according to the best that we can. I pray that you be with us this day. In the name of Christ. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going one more up front. I'm glad to see you, buddy.
We are a rolling time this evening. We are gathering no malls. All righty. All righty. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda with the addition?
They're all there.
Oh, okay.
Motion.
Motion and a second.
Discussion.
Discussion. Go ahead.
Just number 3, fiscal audit compliance. I know you're our representative, and for people who aren't tracking, that's basically where our solid waste goes to. Waste Pro takes our trash, and correct me if I'm wrong there, you know a lot more about this.
That's correct.
Now,
Our limbs and that yard rubbish out there, but our green can stuff heads out there.
When I was going through that audit, it looks like 2021 they had about a $2 million surplus, unobligated funds. So I just going through that, that's a lot of money to sit in a column, for a now that's not a government agency, that's a special authority. So there's different rules and regulations, but maybe that's something we can engage with, because to me, there's no reason to have that much money in a slush fund. Because that $2 million is not in addition, or not requirement for closure or future opening of sales down there. So to me, that might be something we can squeeze and maybe get some returns, some lower costs in the future. But that's why I took out that audit.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's when you start looking at all the details and seeing all the paperwork that just comes our way. So I appreciate you representing us down there, because I know you've been fighting out your dog to reduce our costs of waste.
It is, and some of their prices, they're, what I understand, are less expensive than they used to be. But that is I mean, they're dealing with quite a few issues down there. Tony Harrison runs it down there, does a fantastic job. He's dealing with issues. We're in the process of actually changing over management companies. Waste Pro is actually going to be the management company starting, I want to say July of next year. But how unusual that is that we've already given out the contract 1 year in advance, just so they can get the equipment that they need. Normally, there wouldn't have been near as big of a turnaround, but under Tony's leadership and guidance, I mean, he's a real pro at all of that, and it's kind of led us through that. So we're looking for big things there. I think Waste Pro had a pretty huge footprint as far as being one of the biggest companies that was taking stuff out there. So it just made sense for them to get that. And then there's been some companies that have been purchased and bought out, and then they were kind of inherited the Pine Belt regional waste facility out there. So we look for that to take place over the next year. So Tony, I guess the thing he's keeping his thumb on and doing a good job is he's got a company that knows they're not going to be there a year from now. So you're trying to keep that, and they seem to they were at the last meeting we were at. They seem to want to make good on all of that. It's a huge company, so they want to make sure that they honor their commitments. We want to hold them to the commitments. In 2013, when I made phone calls when we were fixing to privatize, and everything's fun until something happens. And he said, guess what? They're going to pull out the contract, and you better be to pull your contract out too. Because all of a sudden, when it's the handshakes are over with and things get a little tense, everybody's gonna fall back on the contract, and that's when you got people like this guy right here, because you may read it one way, they may read it another way, and here you go. But I do appreciate us having that facility out there. There was some good foresight and that, and like I said, Tony, does a great job out there. I probably said 5 sentences when I could have said one there, but anyway, I appreciate you looking over that. I think I've actually had that PDF, and I don't know, I have gotten that to Chris Lockwood, and I'll double check and see if I can get that to the rest of you guys as well. But we've got a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, anybody for public comment? Oh, hey, come on up, James.
He's a sweet.
I like those shirts. How you guys doing?
Good.
We just
Well,
want to thank you guys for letting us honor our veterans by cleaning up the area over here, the walk of honor. We do that once a year to honor somebody. I mean, we're all from the military background. Our family is. So this is the way we can give back to those guys for what they do. So we're going to do it free of charge and have a look beautiful.
Tell us a little about your company.
Okay, we started the company in 2017. Worked in the old industry, Chevron. Old industry kind of going downhill, so I want to leave a legacy back for my family, my kids. So I gave this idea. I was like, I don't know nothing about it. So for a year, I got to Doug for all the information that I needed, the equipment. Then I made the big step and got some equipment. Well, he put more in my plate. As far as equipment, I was just gonna get one, he gave me 3. So, it worked out great. He provided it all the way. Just trying to make everything look good, man. I mentioned to them, there's a few things right here I've been teaching to do for pedal, but we will talk about that later. So you guys, that's kind of us in a nutshell. I mean, 2017, we're just a small business, family-owned property.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate y'all, instead of you appreciate us, we're thanking you, and really appreciate that. I got high hopes for that area out there. It just takes time, but something you guys are gonna go do. We're gonna see the results instantaneous, and I like that part. Any questions for them?
No, I just, again, appreciate you all, and you're a member of the chamber, that's kind of how this all started. You were at a chamber luncheon, and you look around as you're walking out, and just look down on the ground, of that whole area, and so I appreciate when people step forward and take something like this. It's not about the money, it's not about the job, it's really about making a difference. So, and that's what's great about the chamber and the city work together. It's identifying projects to where we can move forward. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Okay, thank you. All righty, Mr. Slaughter, Mike Slaughter, he's not on your list. He's giving y'all a handout. For those that don't know, Mr. Slaughter does a lot of our redistricting every 10 years, as you know, by the U.S. Constitution. We have to redraw the lines, and that was the last work that Mr. Slaughter did, was right there.
That's it.
So you guys are gonna inherit new people. We've grown. Tell us, what does that mean?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of the board. I'm Mike Slaughter with Slaughter and Associates Urban Planning Consultants. I think we have a few new board members since the last time I was standing at this podium, so congratulations. And I know you're going to do a great job for the city. Fortunately for me, I go all the way back to the 1990s working with the city of Petal, having that fortune of working with them. More recently, as the mayor mentioned, and I think most importantly, I worked on the city's long-range comprehensive plan, as well as their zoning ordinance. And that's something that we got public input. We got input from all the department heads, the city officials, and it's a grassroots comprehensive plan. So if you're not familiar with that document, I know you probably have your plate full since you've been elected, but I would encourage you to get familiar with that document and implement that document because it really is a City of Petal document to guide the future growth and development well as the future land use map that's in there will help you in any rezoning issues and so forth. Also, as the mayor mentioned, I've worked with the city on redistricting, and we're back. We have the new 2020 decennial census, and it's with the growth, it's likely that the city will have to redistrict. First of all, let me tell you about a couple of documents that I handed out. This one is my company packet that gives you information about my urban planning firm. Back in the back, there's 4 flyers that have to give you additional information about annexation, comprehensive planning, regulating development, as well as redistricting. I've also handed out to you a PowerPoint presentation that the first few slides give you a little information about me and my firm. And then I get into the redistricting process. So I'm also just let you review the first few slides regarding my firm and the clients that we have. But if you'll go over to slide 7, and I'm not going to read all of this, but basically what we have got to do, number one, to determine if you need to redistrict, is we'll take this map, which is your currently adopted redistricting map that is based on the 2010 decennial census. Since then, the city has experienced some growth. We've also had an annexation as well. So we will take those 2020 numbers. We have the census block information that's throughout the city. So we'll take those numbers, divide that by 6. That's the number of wards that you have in the city. That would give us what's called as our ideal population. In other words, if we had every ward on that exact population, there'd be no deviation at all or percent difference. But that's not going to happen. Write it down. That never happens. So we get that ideal population. Some wards are going to have a population above that ideal. Some of them are going to have populations below that ideal population. What we've got to do is the largest populated ward, the percent difference between that ideal and the largest populated ward, plus the percent difference between that ideal population and the smallest populated ward, doesn't need to be greater than 10%. It needs to be 10% or less. That's to protect the one man, one vote principle, or one person, one vote principle. In other words, we don't want to stack one ward with 5,000 people and spread another 1,000 in each other ward. 5,000 people that only have one voice as compared to the other 1,000 that would have their own alderman. So that's what we got to do. We also keep in mind the impact on minority voting strength. Once we calculate this with the 2020 decennial census, that's referred to as our benchmark plan. And we take that racial composition, and when we make adjustments, we try not to have as much of a negative impact on that as well. There are a number of criteria. We don't want to redistrict any of you out of your wards when we start, if we have to redistrict. And let me say, if we have to redistrict, if we're 10% or less, then it's not a requirement, other than we do have some annexation area that we need to include in the area. So there will be a redistricting from that standpoint, from the annexation standpoint. And then we will want to have as changes, the minimal amount of change that we can in the wards to get in balance as we can possibly. And I have all of those listed in the presentation. And on slide number 8 is just really a summary of the 5 steps. Determine if the redistricting is necessary. Of course, we've had an annexation. We certainly want to keep the public informed. If we have to redistrict, keep them informed along the process. The reason is because each and every one of them that resides in the city now, some of them may have voted for you, some of them may not. But regardless, there may be some that are going to shift from one alderman to another alderman. So we want to make sure that they're brought along, they understand why we're redistricting, why we're having to redistrict, and the reasons that we're having to shift these lines, so they can be well aware and we can have their input. we'll certainly develop new plans to, make sure that we do meet one person, one vote principle, provide for public review and adoption, and then as well as implementation of that plan. The fortunate thing is you just had the, election this past summer, so we have a little time, but in my opinion, if you're out of bounds, I think you need to go ahead and meet that one person, one vote principle in addition to the annexation that we have. If you flip through the PowerPoint presentation, I have more detailed information on each one of the steps. And there's a lot of text in there, and I'm not going to take the time to read that. I think I've covered a lot of the important part, but I'd like to close out. If you'll flip over to slide 14, you can see in 2010, the population of the city was 10,454. In 2020, that has increased to over 11,010 in population. If you flip over to slide 15, that gives you a comparison of the racial composition for the city 2010 as well as 2020, but for the Black, white, and other races in the city. And you can see that the other races were 4% in 2010, and that's jumped up to almost 10% in 2020. And so you can see how those comparisons are made from white, black, and others in the 2010 to the 2020. So with that presentation, I will turn the meeting back over to you, Mayor, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you all may have at this time.
Any questions here?
Well, this is more for the city overall, but I know we potentially have to be looking at districting based on wards, but I know City of Hattiesburg is doing the same thing. You're doing the work for City of Hattiesburg?
No, I'm not. No.
And I also know that potentially the Forest County supervisors will have to do this whole process. And when we talk about elections, this is general city information. The next big election in the city is actually the supervisors election next year. 23.
Yes.
That's the next, basically, because our city basically has two supervisors, geographically. So based on our demographics, based on our numbers, that's something else that we have to look at. New lines being drawn within our own city, not just wards, but potentially senators, legislators, the whole, so it's a whole new drawing. So is there a time limit for something like this to happen besides obviously enough time to educate and advise our ward citizens for us?
It can vary between the type of a city that you have. I've seen it written in where a city should redistrict within 6 months. After that, I'm not sure if that applies to a city like the city of Petal or not. It's something that Rocky could research and see.
Hey, Mike.
Let me tell you, one thing for sure is I don't pretend to be a lawyer. I'm a civil engineer and urban planner, and so and Rocky's a pretty smart attorney too.
So I just asked if we find out what our timeline is to make sure we affect this change. And then,
What were you thinking as far as the timeline, just so that we have an idea whether we're already, when I find out, let's say if it's 6 months or a year, that we've got to get this done, what is your?
My recommendation from a planning standpoint, and one of the things that they teach us in planning school is keeping the public informed, having the public involved, and that's what happened in that comprehensive plan that I was telling you about earlier. So if there's a need to redistrict, the sooner the better from a planning standpoint. It's something you get out of the way, you will have everyone in their ward for the next 4 years. An election comes around, there's no changing going on. So I think it's the best thing for the citizens to go ahead and get it. If you want to have change, go ahead and get it out of the way early on. They know who their alderman is, and they'll be able to judge them when election comes around in 4 years. So that's my recommendation. Do it as soon as possible.
Any other questions? All right, Mike, good deal. Appreciate you. If you have any questions, we'll give you a holler.
One last thing. One last thing, if I may, this is a letter of agreement, let me give that one to the city clerk. And this is a standard letter of agreement that I've been using for 30 years, but feel free to review it, ask any questions. And you can see under paragraph 1, under paragraph 1, we have the bullets that are listed to cover the entire process, including at the very end, preparing the legal descriptions. In the resolution that you'll adopt, we'll need the legal descriptions of each and every ward. We'll have a map that will go with that, but we also have to legally define with certainty each and every ward. So we'll prepare those legal descriptions. That's something we do all the time. We do annexation work all the time. That's legal description and intent, as well as redistricting after cities annex is required to redistrict. So we try to cover all of the bases there. If you look, well, one last thing I want to mention, paragraph 3, sorry about that, Melissa. Paragraph 3, it gives you an estimate of cost. Most of our work is done by the hour. There's a different billing rate depending on who's working on it. If we can, if there's not a lot of change, I think that cost will be on the low end of that. So I tried to put a range in there of what I think the cost would be to the city. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you, and if there's any questions.
Awesome, Mike, I appreciate the work you've done for us in the past.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be of service. And just for reference, I will leave this map. I'll leave it here in case y'all want to reference that. Again, thank you for your time and congratulations. And I know you do a great job for the city.
Thank you, Mike. Good seeing you again.
Thank you. Nice seeing you.
Mike, I would also add that Alderman Lott and myself aren't as concerned about redistricting, but anyway, I would appreciate the work you've done with us.
Yes.
Very professional.
Some of you got to run it large in Drive City, that's for sure. Thank you very much.
Good deal, thanks. All righty, proclamations and resolutions. Now, I'm not so sure about this one. Hopefully this will most of the votes for this one. Number 4, request, is there a motion to request to adopt proclamation from Governor Tate Reeves approving the following holidays: Thanksgiving, November 25th and 26th, Christmas, December 23rd and December 24th,
That's what he said.
New Year's, December 31st. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Mayor. Yes.
Aye. Are you in favor or you got an objection?
No, I've got a question I want to ask about
Are
that.
you doing the comment section's over with?
Well, I just, I'm sorry
Yeah,
about
look.
that.
Is it not the vacation? Is that the days off?
When was that proposed by the governor?
He does it every year.
He probably does it without us knowing it, because some of us work at Walmart, you know?
Would you check? Oh,
I
this
think it
isn't
was
for
like
y'all.
October the 20th.
This isn't for Walmart.
Well, me and the city of Powell, Bobby Hawkins.
We're glad to get your print out of the proclamation. You can take it to your ball.
Eric Marine.
See how that.
No, I was just wondering about that, that's why I asked.
Well, there's no bids and quotes. Old business is, number 5 is to request a purchase Caterpillar 250 kilowatt standby generator for Sourcewell quote in the amount of $64,016. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Just a discussion on that.
Okay, go ahead.
I apologize because I didn't close loop with Mike on.
I'll let you shut, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, can you just update us on, the cost of putting the gas line out there?
I talked with the natural gas folks, they said approximately $15,000. We just went with the computer and how long it was. But you're looking about $15,000, and I didn't really check back to see how much cost difference the generator would be, couldn't have to convert that as well.
And I followed up on that. There is no savings in cost to speak of there. It actually would cost us to do it. But the problem here we have here is that if we don't get that generator in time, which we're going to need to do, the sewage can't be pumped over, and that becomes a literal mess. So
Can you
we've got to
remind us
do that
of-
line and, excuse me, pardon.
Can you remind us what the benefits of going to gas would be then?
Well, you know, there's pros and cons in both ways. Natural gas is a cleaner fuel to start with. It usually involves less maintenance on the back end. The costs are basically negligible. The differences between the generator, when I looked at costs between the two. Like I said, it's, you know, there's basically is usually a easier to source because during emergency or disaster, and of course, again, a gas line can break. You know, if we have an earthquake, you know, lines can be disrupted. But you know, one of the most difficult things during disasters is transporting fuel. Fuel and water, you know, is what is the two worst logistical nightmares for any sort of disaster recovery. So anytime you can eliminate a fuel requirement in any sort of emergency planning is beneficial. And that's really the biggest thing is that it's a you know, planning factor that we can take off the table. And plus that, you know, I know it comes with 5-year maintenance, but, you know, so any maintenance after 6 years is on the city itself. And like I said, we've been real fortunate, and whoever picked out the last one, it lasted quite a while, which is a good sign. And that was a diesel, so there's no regret to that. But again, it's about future-proofing ourselves, because we know we're gonna be in that lagoon, or that, we're gonna be there for another 100 years, some sort of facility there pumping stuff and giving our love to Hattiesburg. So it's a matter of, you know, do we spend $15,000 and have that capability there? Or like I said, again, it's a $15,000 investment and, you know.
And my understanding is that, at least with today's rates, for the natural gas, that would actually pay for itself, well before the life of the generator, near completion, and that line would still be there for the one to replace it after we're long gone. Those lines last longer than I'll be here. And I'm not that old. And so, I mean, it sounds like a very logical thing to do, and I was actually looking forward to hear kind of more about it today. And then that's why I was kind of like, you know, going a little bit out there, fleshing it out a little bit. And then, like you say, in an actual disaster, gas lines, I've never had mine go out. I used to live on the coast, and I've been through all the hurricanes. Every single one hit the coast, I was there. And the gas lines, they were 100%. They never lost.
Actually, here, we actually had a good bit of problems with them.
Funny story, gas leak in my front yard last night. They woke me up all night fixing that. But
That's not good for our talk right now.
it's not. It's fairly rare. That was a 60-year line that said they dug out.
That was my concern. Trees ended up snapping a lot of gas lines here. And as Drew mentioned, there are landmines either way. The thing I kind of fall back on is the diesel made it through. And then we have some emergency operating where we can actually get access to the diesel, obviously understanding that could be a landmine as well.
Any major stuff that happens, we try to make sure our tanks and docks are full, which is 1,500 gallons. And then we've got a tank we can transport, fuel as well with, so we can transport that.
And hopefully we don't have any more Katrinas. Shouldn't say that, should. But the diesel kind of through Katrina is kind of what I fall on. I know we can get that in service quicker too, but on the diesel side.
Right, if you got a natural gas, you gotta, you know, of course, you might get a requote on the generator, but you gotta have that line ran and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, that was an estimate, we hadn't actually run the
Generators.
So we
Cook down there right now.
Bill every month too. To have that gas station, I mean, I know what it is.
well, it's gonna cycle on and off. anyway.
How quick can you get it in if we turn it loose now?
I hadn't talked to them.
Okay, that's one of the reasons we had just put that back on there. But whatever the board is. So we got a motion and a second, to go with the, diesel. All in favor?
Nay.
Okay, what's the number? 5, 6? Okay. All right. General business. Number 6, request to accept supplemental agreement number 2, showing decrease in the total project cost with Warren Paving for the 2021 overlay. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Number 7, request to advertise for and make final payment in the amount of $19,987.12 to Warren Paving Inc. For the 2021 overlay. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second. That discussion, is that the one we're getting a $38,000, or was that the one prior to that? We had saved it, Mike, is that the one we saved 38,000 on that contract?
Yes.
Which is good news, that's a good news for us, so appreciate the hard work.
Once we get into that process, what you'll end up seeing is we'll put a wish list, bid it out. Sometimes we can have to cut a little bit, and hopefully this is a situation where we didn't do more, we actually are getting money, saving money, but sometimes they'll say, hey, we can do an extra road or something like that. It's typically.
And that money will just go back in the pot for our next year. Overlay, good, that's good news, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 8, request to accept agreement with Precision Communications for annual inspection and maintenance of the warning sirens that went off twice today. Chief?
EOC.
Well, they work for that cost annually. Is there a motion? There's a motion and second.
I'll second for discussion.
Yeah, go ahead.
My understanding is that most of that cost is the battery. Is that correct?
Chief, you're familiar with, or that might be a mine thing. No, wait a second, we used to pull that out of your budget.
Yeah, let's don't do that again.
Well, it's just staring at you pretty hard now.
So my question is that the maintenance and testing, does that include the cost of the battery? Am I understanding that
The
correctly?
quote that they gave was replacing the batteries every 3 years.
Okay.
And they grease it, it is mechanical and then it rotates, so that's gotta be checked off. They check the fittings off. Unless you put the package in there, all the things that they will do for that. But if they checking the electrical connections, the battery charger.
Okay, and I did read over that. My confusion was, are we paying for the battery? Because those batteries, those things are not cheap.
No,
And they just first few every month, right?
No, the way,
It's supposed to be tested.
yeah, the way I understand on the contract, these Waylands, Waylands,
Yeah.
there's 2 batteries, which are 31 deltas. They're not the AGMs. A lot of places have upgraded to the AGM batteries, which, they have a 3-year warranty. These 31 deltas that, that's the standard set in there, but those are only 18-month battery warranty. So there is, confusion because when they recycle all those times, we had problems down at Camp Shelby with that situation. So we upgraded AGMs. But again, it's every 3 years. They said, we'll put 2 new batteries in this, but so that $800 cost up front for the batteries for all 6 or for all three, but this is only once a year. So my question, based on the documentation for that siren, it actually states that there's a requirement for a quarterly inspection and not just I know every month we hear it, but it says that there's a quarterly requirement to maintain those. So who's doing the quarterly requirement inspection of those? You have to get to the top of
Nobody's
those.
doing an annual. So that's why I got with Precision Communications that sold us, warning signs to the city. They were the only one I could get a quote back from. We had an electrician that was doing it for a number of years, but they didn't want to renew the contract.
Yeah, it's a
There's
lot
many
of,
people that will
Come out
even
here.
bid on it, but, we're not qualified to service and maintain it as far as what to check and what to do as far as preventing it.
yeah, now the contract only deals with the mechanical, sirens themselves on the poles. Who's doing the base station checks?
EOC.
DOC sets, you all are doing that.
Well, there's an activation capability from the dispatch center police department and from the EOC. And they were more involved in that part of it. We don't have any means of setting it off, maybe from the fire department. Thank you.
Well, Harold wanted to know why y'all did it twice.
Well, we just went.
The comment, you were grinning somewhere was made, but I can't confirm that. But
So it really sounds like this is, the only company who can come out and do at least an annual check for us. And based on, cost wise, I mean, it's within our, needs done. So appreciate you going and finding it. But like I said, the devil's in the details on these.
I can imagine there's many companies that are doing this.
already got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 9, request to accept engineering contract with Shell, Zimmerman and Waits for sewer improvement at Carterville Road. Carterville Road. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
More discussion.
Discussion?
This is part of my agenda when I ran. A lot of people on Carterville Road specifically were complaining about sewage backing up, blowing up grinder pumps at $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 a pop. For some people that barely have a dollar, having to do this to pump the sewage out of their houses. This is drastically needed. It's gonna come down Dawson Cutoff. It's gonna connect with this generator that we're buying to pump the sewage back over. It's gonna relieve pressure off some of the lines that run along Carterville Road. And there are a couple other projects that are going along with that. This is the promise that I've made. I appreciate the mayor working along with it, Mike working along with it, but it's gotta be done, folks. This has to be done in the city, because everything in the city flows down to those points. If we don't get it out of here, it's gonna stay here, and it's gonna continue to cause problems. This will actually take pressure off the lines along Carterville Road, along with a couple other projects that we're looking at diverting, so that we don't have those issues in the future. The short-term fix for 4 to 5 years, but again, we have to have it right now. We don't have a choice.
Stop me when I'm wrong. This kind of generated from us having 2 8-inch lines going into another 8-inch line. So obviously, Alan, that math don't work real well, does it? And we got away with it for a long, long time. So basically it comes from a period we were going to go down Dawson Cutoff with either a 12 or a 15. And this contract basically turns John loose to do the math on that. He could come back with us and say, hey, I thought we could do this. We can't, we're going to do that. So that'll be a bigger decision on down the road. So just looking at the funds, we were able to add 2 more lift station improvements, one at Dry Prong Creek and one over on by Hewitt on Stewart. And I think we're going to do a diversion there and put it into into a better situation, really relieve some pressure and work out from that area. Obviously, we've got some huge decisions to make coming up in the next year when it comes to sewer. I know y'all didn't really realize we would be talking about the sewers so much, but anyway, any other comments?
I was gonna say, Mr. Strickland, is that the problem present all the time, or is that only during heavy rains?
Well, it happens more excessively during heavy rains. There's no doubt we have an infiltration. We've talked about that before. But if you really care about your sewage bill, and everybody does, that seems to be what we get more calls about water and sewage. You're going to care about this because one of the things we're trying to do, some of the projects we're working on are keeping the infiltration of the water from going into the system, and we get paid for that to be processed and pumped across. So the less water coming into the system going across into Ashburn should equate to a lower sewage bill in the future.
And that's a big deal. And you know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to make the connection between our drainage get into our sewage system, and it's costing us a lot of money. But yeah, if we have stuff coming in people's houses, we have got to do something.
I agree.
Got a motion, got a second.
I would just like to add, talking to the city engineer a couple times, going through the contract. I think for transparency, we also have to look at how we're going to pay for this. And I think the mayor's got some good news on that, but something that kind of, that was, that's a good news story is that, if we expect this project costs about $700,000, that's an unforecasted project that we did not budget within the fiscal year budget for 2021, to my understanding. So this will not come out of our public works budget, which is key because he's got his hands full dealing with everything else. But this approximately 700,000, which is just a dart out there. It could be less, it could be more. It's going to come from our general fund. Is that correct, Mayor? Water.
Yeah, water comes out of a fee-based, and ultimately, I am going to sit down with Mike and with, I told you that. I'm going to sit down with you and John Weeks, our city engineer, and come up with a hit list, basically. Go down to DEQ hit list, the things that get us, come up with X number of millions of dollars of stuff and present that to you guys, and we can kind of go from there, because it's been my experience that you're going to have 10 things, you're probably not going to ever get to all 10 of them. But as those funds become available, see, since we're on the bottom of the food chain when it comes to money, but we do know we're having X amount of money coming in. We've got some bonds that will be getting paid off, so a lot of moving parts from that standpoint. We can always go to the board and say, okay, here's one we can afford, here's one that makes sense, and it'll all, kind of flow together. Obviously, as Craig said, with this one, this starts at where it all begins, or I guess it all ends. So anyway, you don't want to make improvements up here on the system, and you're going to make it worse on the bottom part of the system. So we're going to improve down here and try to work our way out. There's a couple other spots that I'll make recommendations that we deviate from that, but I think that's a good principle to start with.
But it's very obvious when it rains where the problem is and where it all goes.
And I hope when it comes from an and we're not the only city with infiltration. I do hope though, at some point I will be able to show, find the funds, that will be needed to be able to address some of that. Man, we're talking millions and millions of dollars, but we're fixing to have some large amounts of money that we've never had to, well, and since my time in here, we haven't had to deal with it. So, hopefully we'll use it wisely and, leave it for the next group in better shape than we found it.
So just for clarification, because I want to make sure, the word doesn't go out that we're raising water bills to pay.
Oh, no, absolutely not. And that was one of the reasons I like that, is that we're actually going to pay cash for this. I want to say the last 2 years, but the last year, we end up coming in under budget, and that part, which is a good thing. And this is not going to touch any of our 2.6 million of ARPA money. I forget all the different letters, but it's not going to touch any of that money. It'll be basically out of funds that weren't expended in last budget. So that's a. If not, yeah, if we were having to finance it, this wouldn't be here. We'd be holding our horses. But anyway, we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 10, request to adjust water services bill to 220 Linway Road in the amount of $570.50, and in sewer in the amount of $250.50. Is there a motion?
Motion.
So I didn't know that, did they?
There you go, Miss Ada. Is
If there's not a leak, if there's not a leak, we can't adjust it.
They were saying there must have been one good one.
Well, that wouldn't
They said something about fixing
that wouldn't take
electric.
there.
I thought I'd read that they said that there was a potential leak.
And they did say that, but then they said that they have to find a leak. And that so the situation here is that they're normally on a well. And they switched over to the city water for a while. Now, I don't know this, and I'm not an engineer, but I have had a past experience where I did exactly that. And the city's water was actually getting pumped into the well. And that sounds like a very likely situation here. I'm not comfortable with approving this without.
I take away my motion and let's table it, and then if they bring us some proof that it's a leak, and then we can adjust it.
Okay.
I think that they've had people look at it though and can't find a leak.
Well, then that's, if it's going to be, that's what.
Didn't they, in the OT offered for, to turn it back on to see if, if the counter spins, to identify, if it's working, which we think it is right now. My question is, and it really is to educate me, Mayor, is that, and Mike, is when, can you turn on and off your city water within a week or within a month? Or, is that
That's
an
like the only
option?
situation I've ever heard when I read that. I've
You're
never.
not supposed to mess with the meter. That's what we're supposed to turn it on and off. That's why you have a cutoff valve at your house that the actual resident can turn the water on and off as needed or if they want to. Like you said though, if you are still hooked up to your well and you don't shut that valve off when you well, and you turn on the city water, it will go, and it will go right into that well.
From what Melissa tells me, they pay a minimum bill every month, and they probably just manually went out there and turned the water off. I mean, they have used like
It's
zero
always-
water.
Yeah, it's always
and then-
zero, we went out there and checked it 15 times because it never uses any water.
But they're on the well, or normally,
We don't have.
except this one time.
Yeah, but there is a lot of water that went somewhere and they don't know where it went.
Very wrong with what you said.
So we're gonna motion to deny.
Well, they're both connected to the house.
Yeah, they said there's not leak anyway, then, yeah,
We make a motion to deny and there.
I changed my motion.
And the information, and we can look at it again anyway. So the motion is to deny, is there a second?
A second.
All in favor of denying this request?
Uh,
Number 11, request to approve the docket claims for the month of October. Is there a motion?
motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Number 12, request to waive sewer requirement for 108 Elizabeth Circle, allowing a septic tank to be installed. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mike, what's going on there? 108, that's the,
That's that house that they're building back there.
So long.
We do have sewer there, and they would have to be on a grinder pump, because it is an uphill, flow. Those sewers up on the street.
Mike, aren't they further than 300 feet from a sewer connection?
Yes.
And so that's normally, if I remember correctly, that's our cutoff. If they're more than 300 feet, then this is something that we normally grant.
Yeah.
And I will, throw I've actually gone look at the property. It's fairly isolated. It's very off to the side. Like I say, it's 300 feet. It's surrounded by woods. If you stand where they're building their house, you might be able to see a roof from where you are. But it's pretty remote. It's in a good location.
That's good. All right, we got a motion and a second, all in favor? Number 15.
Thank y'all.
There you
I
are.
thought they were here.
Yeah, that's way better.
You're on burden. Number 13, request for reduced speed limit on East Central Avenue from 45 to 35 miles per hour. Motion and a second. All
Just for everybody's awareness, yeah, we're gonna, for now, drop the speed limit on East Central Avenue that's going out past Sonic and now Mariachi on towards Walmart. Particularly East Central Avenue and Hillcrest, we've had a good number of wrecks there. Something I encountered a lot whenever I was campaigning. And ironically, I think the day that we approved the study on this intersection, there's another one there that day. And so this is our kind of first attempt at seeing if we can counteract some of the wrecks that have been happening there, some of the injuries and the destruction of property for the cars.
And what I would recommend is, also, since it's dropping, let the police officers get one for time being, so everybody gets used to it.
Yeah, we'll talk to Chief Hyde. If I get some warnings done there, and try and give people a month or two to kind of get used to this change.
And I would like to share, I was very hesitant to agree to this. Had a rough day at work today. I love my job so much, and sometimes you have those days. And man, I was going too fast right at this spot, and I had to stop very quickly to avoid an accident.
Yeah.
And I had to sit there and go, well, I hear you. So.
I know plenty of people, and some of the families that live right in that area have basically told me that they had cars pulled out of their front yards. So, I mean, pretty much everyone around there has a kid, or at least the 2 or 3 families that I know. And so, yeah, undoubtedly this will catch a little bit of frustration. I mean, honestly, it'd probably frustrate me. But I think right now it's the best decision. We are going to keep an eye on the intersection and see if something else needs to be done in the future. We've discussed the light, but right now lights are too expensive. I think they'll be running us about $250,000. So we're going to try this, see how it works, keep our ears to the ground, have our officers keep an eye on it, and yeah. So.
And Mike is going to clear out that side of the road too.
Right, I mean, what are we gonna reduce it to?
Oh, we hadn't even told you what we did.
45.
We were during the property hearings.
35?
45 to 35, yes, sir.
All right, you've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 14, request to accept the resignation of employee 20649 in the water department. Is there a motion?
Motion.
there a second?
Mike, are you gonna be already having somebody replace this one?
No, we haven't looked yet, we haven't
Okay.
started on that process yet.
You know, so there won't be the impact on.
Well, there's always gonna be a little bit of impact, but, yeah, we're pressing forward. We gotta get it all. We got another one coming on board, it's well trained, so it's gonna help us out tremendously as well. And then we'll start getting everything back and put out for another position.
I think.
All right, got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Number 15, request to adjust water services bill at 1602 Old Richmond Road in the amount of $1,075.97 due to a leak.
That's a good one to have that one-time charge.
Is it a one-time charge?
I mean, it's counts the lifetime adjustment.
Come on, Steve.
Oh, yeah,
That's really up to
they
y'all.
they do know that.
Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 16, request to adjust the water services bill to 6 Clinton Drive in the amount of $241 due to a leak. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a
Take
second?
it as long as they know this is a one-time charge.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 17, request to adjust water services bill to 725 Highway 42 in the amount of $164 due to a leak. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Steve?
I don't see it.
She gets the point. Seminars and travel. Number 18, request for Lynn Campbell to attend. Lynn Campbell to attend, Lynn and Melissa to attend MMCCA Winter Conference in Flowwood, December 15th through the 17th. Total cost for each of them is, Lynn's is $727.56. Melissa's is $727.56 plus
Go
mileage.
right together? Okay. Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of 18 and 19?
Aye.
Okay. And number 20, request to adopt an order promoting the following effective November 3rd, 2021. Drew Craft, captain, to $20.19. Rob McCraw, engineer, $13.18. Dalton Delk, engineer, $13.18. Cody Barber, engineer, $13.18. Timothy Brown, first class, $12.64. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
Chief, can you just give us a quick highlight on this cadre that just graduated or went through this cycle and the training, the test that just took over? And
Well, we've had a good number of openings in the engineer department, because of not having enough eligible people. So they all just tested in October, and these positions have been open last budget year, part of them, and this budget year up to this point. Now, the captain position is one that Drew Craft took as a lieutenant. And he moved from shift to 8-hour days. Basically, as a medical officer, and he's evolved into that as well as training. And Will Lewis, our logistics chief, is doing more logistics and records and inventory, and that's turning out to be plenty on his plate, and Drew's going to assume more role doing training. But he's been doing the job for a year at the salary he transferred over from shift. But he did test, passed the captain's test, because he was able to take just like his other guys were able to take the engineer's test.
the reason I highlight that, Mayor, is because anytime you promote based on, skills testing, like I said, it's a great, are you all gonna have a ceremony for these individuals, or you just tell them to get to work harder?
Well, we started that years ago, and then we got where we were changing out so many, so often it got to be kind of old hat, so no, we don't have anything planned at this time, but we will recognize them, possibly if we have a Christmas dinner. Don't have anything planned, we'll be glad to if you want to go. Well, thanks, Shannon.
I'll let the mayor make that timeline,
But
but
they will be off several days, according to the vote earlier. So, I don't even know if I'll be in town now. I've got so many days off.
Days off.
Yeah. Just run before weekend. Got a motion and a second, all in favor? Awesome.
Also, guys tested on, the engineers took a written exam as well as a practical exam with the truck and the scenario and pumping a line. So it's not just, who's got seniority or who's got the most time in that position. It's a test, it's competitive, and, these were in order of rank, as far as having ranked out on the scores on the engineers. Because we had more, we have a couple others that are eligible, but we don't have a position at this time.
Thank you, Chief.
I just want to say publicly, thank you. And I know it's not just you, Mike, thank you. The street department, recently came and cleaned out the second ditch. It's a really big deal for me and the neighborhood. And, I just want to tell everyone how happy, a lot of people are right now, and I really do appreciate that.
The only objection I have is that Mike didn't tell me when they were doing that, and I was gonna run down there and get some photos of me.
And I can't thank you enough, and I know that was not an easy job, and I know there's snakes and critters in there, and I'm sure you should. And so just, I'm very appreciative of that, thank you, and I know a lot of people, are gonna really appreciate that when the rain's coming down, and it will make it's gonna have a huge impact, and I hope y'all do realize that that's a big deal.
The efficiency that with the inmates back, y'all have been really.
Our street department really has been really, they would get after it, with 3 extra guys out there helping them. And,
And I haven't been down there to drink coffee.
got a lot of
You got slow.
things ready for the flags for when that comes up, and then we got that ditch cleaned and a bunch of other projects that we need to do, that 3 extra people helped out. We had 4, but then one fell out, let's have 3 now, but we've been able to get a lot of projects done, big colorful stuff. And of course, mowing season's dying out, so that's something that leaves us more and more to be able to load.
Well, I took me and my kids, and I made them walk it with me, they were so happy, and, I saw some of the challenges that you had to overcome there, and I see more of what you were telling me, on that one end, but you did it, and just thank you, I appreciate your work.
Hey, Mike, just briefly, you said you cut from 4 to 3 on the trustees. Is that something that we did, or did we not fund enough for you?
Oh, no, so these are inmates, that we were able to get, we didn't have to pay for, didn't go through the county. But we're limited on how many we can get. They're just now getting back up and going again and trying to get everything situated. And everybody's trying to get as many as they can get. We tried for 4. We got 4 for a little while, but then it fell back to 3. So we had anything we can get,
Yeah, that's a great initiative. Because I said, I wasn't tracking it. I know we had to pay the county to do that program, so great. 'Cause I know Hilton, holes are being filled across the city, so, obviously, whatever you're doing is working great, better, so thank you.
Awesome. Real quick, I know we've been there longer than we typically are. Just real quick, wanted to give out some patrol stats from, giving that a voice to our police department. Obviously, we've had to work through, the strains of COVID. And in October, they are, back fully functioning. Calls for service was, 1,339. That's in a 31-day period, 1,339. That includes you too, doesn't it, Chief? That's just straight them?
Now, I don't know.
I would think that'd be called into them. I'll double check that. I just had assumed, anyway, total reports generated in our police department was 63. Total arrests were 38. There was total citations, and I know this has been, a social media topic. There was a total citations, for the month of October of 248. So our guys are out there working, and getting the job done, and all of our first responders are very appreciative of the job that they continue to do for us. I get these every month, and sometimes I look at them harder than I do other months. July was a really big month. We had 1,706 calls for service over to the PD. But anyway, with that being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
So,
Is there a second? All in favor?
Uh,
Ah, you-